Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Magic in Mind. My name is Maggie Rose Cunningham, and I'm your host today. Today, we are going to be taking a deep dive into the power of the sage, and we're doing that under the patronage of a lovely full moon. It's a full moon in Inguz, the rune of the seed, the rune of gestation. It's a really powerful, potent full moon energy. So we're going to be looking at that. We're going to be having a deep dive into the power of the sage, and we are going to look at the other planetary movements. We've got 2 other planetary movements as well as the full moon this week for us to feel into, to see what magic, what potency is available to us, what challenges they might present, what opportunities they might present to us. And then we have our 6 spirit guide runes that we will look at today as well. Some of those I do try and align them with the planetary movements and also to the runes that people are presenting with. So welcome everybody, welcome Suki, welcome Maggie. Do not worry that you are late. I'm also late. We went on holiday this weekend, which was absolutely blissful. It was wonderful. We stayed in a forest cabin, little log cabin. I got to go and greet the dawn with my walking or my running each morning. We had log fires and it was wonderful. And while we were away, one of our cats decided we do not like them being away and proceeded to wee all over the house. And then now we've returned. We cleared all of that up last night and we returned. I went out this morning to prepare for this session, which I like to do on a Monday. Came back to find that one of our cats obviously doesn't like that we have returned. And so I had weed all over the house today. So with that in mind, I'm going to share a little phrase with you, and I'm going to suggest that you write this down because it makes everything else in terms of understanding and claiming our power of the sage more simple. So what I'm going to suggest you write down so you can return to it is the power of the sage is to make sense of the world so we can participate in it. I'm going to put it down actually in the chat for those of you who are here. So the power of the sage is to make sense of the world so we can participate. Okay. So with that sentence in mind, I was thinking to myself, I wonder what lessons I can draw from trying to make sense of the world and why my cats, one of them has decided to wee when we're absent and one of them has decided to wee when we come back. And I've decided to see it as a gesture of love, regardless. Distress that we weren't there, and maybe excitement that we've come back is what I'm going with. And that's part of what our sage does. Our sage helps us to make sense of the world so that we can participate in it without just going, why? Because that doesn't really help me. I could be somebody who's like, right, I want to go and I'm going to get a pet psychologist to help to deal with my strange cats. I'm probably not going to do that because one of my cats, who I'm pretty certain is the culprit, at least one of those, is almost 20 years old now. So I reckon that whatever psychological meanings her sage is making out of the world and why I'm not there and she's participating in it by deciding to wee inside rather than outside, they're probably stuck. We're probably stuck with that right now. But the sage allows us to make sense so that we can activate our magician self or decide not to. So we can say, yes, I'm okay with that. I don't need to take action. I have an explanation which allows my heart and my soul to be at rest, or for my magician to take action. And we're going to come back to this. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of the full moon, then we're going to come back to this when we look at the power of the sage. Maggie says, oh dear, lovely naughty kitties. They are indeed, but there are 4 of them, so sometimes, we just have to accept those things, don't we? Hi Trish, lovely to see you. You have got algaes for this week. So Trish, I'm going to write that down for you just as a reminder. What we're going to do is we will go through we'll do a little bit for you on the full moon. Then we're going to look at the power of the sage. Then we'll do our planetary movements, looking at the other planetary movements, and then we'll do our stay and play section where we will work with our 6 spirit guide runes and any that come through, anything that comes through from my seer that wants to be shared with you with the runes that you're working with, either as your rune of the day today or your rune of the week. Many of you draw a rune that is for the lunar month, so you're working on that through with one rune for the entire lunar month, which is a really powerful way of working. Suki, you've got Athala. We are going to be working with Athala today as one of our sage runes, but yeah, if you can keep your runes until later, that helps me, because otherwise I'm trying to monitor the chat at the same time as we're looking at the sage too. So if I don't mention your rune when we get to the stay and play session, do pop it in the chat box again, so I've got those in there. So we have, as I said, a beautiful full moon in Ingus. Now, Ingus is the rune of the seed. Let me see if I can find the Ingus rune. And the Ingus rune, to me, evokes two tales. The first tale is often very associated with the Ingus rune, and it is the tale of Yngvi Frey. So Yngvi was a god considered to be an ancestral god. There were peoples called the Ingiavones, I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly, who saw Yng as being an ancestral deity, and the rune poem about the Ingus rune speaks of this deity Yng. But we also know that Yng was also called Yngvi Frey. So this is a pseudonym, a part of the mysteries of the god Frey, who is a fertility god. He is a god of the land. Here we go. Here's the Ingus rune. So it looks a little bit like a seed. For some of you in your rune sets, you might have it might look like a helix going up and down, not to be mistaken with the Athala rune. So this is the Athala rune here. Now, the Athala rune always looks like that. If you've got two pointy bits sticking down and two pointy bits sticking up, that can be the alternate form of the Yng rune. So it can look a bit like DNA sometimes, which is an interesting part if you think about this as being an ancestral deity. Or it can be the seed of gestation. And it is said that in the poem tells us that that Yng took a mysterious journey. He went into the east, which we might think of as being the place of the dawn, the place of the light, and then he came back again. And from this we get a lot of different interpretations of what that means, of how Yng is seen as moving out into the place of mystery, into the place of the renewal of the light, of the rebirthing of the light, perhaps actually going on a quest to restore the light, perhaps through the winter times, going and we often see it as being like the god going down into the deep womb of the great mother goddess and bringing the light back up. And from that we get the idea of perhaps a little bit of like the John Barleycorn legend or the Green Man legend, where the god is literally sacrificed or sacrifices himself and is then rebirthed into the womb of the goddess and resurfaces. So this is often seen as being a summertime or a harvest time rune, where the seeds go down into the earth and then they stay deep down in the earth, and through this period of time they're under the earth, they're in the darkness, in the dark places, waiting to be born again. So this is the legend of Yngvi and of the energy of the masculine, gestating and waiting to be reborn within the womb of the feminine. Now, the other legend, and the one that I'm working with at the moment, is the legend of Hermod. Now, Hermod is known as a messenger god, but I think he's a lot more than that. So in legend, Hermod is sometimes thought to be Odin's son. He's said to his name is he's given as Odin's son. But we're also told sometimes that he's a human. So some people take from that his mother was a human, and some people take from that he was a human who then became named as Odin's son, potentially because of his skill as a shaman or a shamanic practitioner. See, the word shaman doesn't come from the Norse or the Anglo-Saxon. And the legend has it that when Balder, the god of the light, we had the Yngvi, we had the going down into the place where the dawn is born, where the sun is born. In legend, the god of light, Balder, is slain, and he goes down into the underworld, and the goddess Frigg, his mother, calls forth. She says, who will go down into the underworld to plea for Balder's return? And no one volunteers except Hermod. And Hermod goes and he rides on the 8-legged horse Sleipnir down into the underworld to go on to this quest. And so literally like the seed going down into the depths and seeking to bring the light back through this mystery. Now, this mystery of Hermod is the one that we are going to be exploring through Winter Nights this year, 2023. And our first story is gestating at this point. It is called The 8-Legged Horse. So all 4 of our Winter Night stories, and there'll be one released each week, starting from next week, will be a sharing by Hermod about this epic journey that he takes down into the realms of the dead, down into Helheim, to bargain with Hela, the queen of the underworld. And so the first story, The Eight-Legged Horse, is the story of Hermod and of Sleipnir, and why Sleipnir is an eight-legged horse, and what this tells us about Hermod's potential origins, and how it came that he was named as the son of Odin. So this is the first of our winter tales that we're going to be exploring. So you can obviously, Winter Nights is available to purchase now. You can purchase it now so that you receive all of those stories into your inbox through the coming weeks as we move towards Yule, and then we start to emerge when the sun is reborn at Yule. Then we have our last story just after that. You can also, if you haven't done so already, you can participate in Suna's Star Wheel. So Suna's Star Wheel is my runic astrology, my little calendar, so you can go along and you can get that. And today I released the full moon in Ingu's meditation. It's a wild voice writing session, so it's about drawing on your powerful, wise, wild voice. Very important and very powerful for the sage self, which is why I wanted to bring that piece in and talk about the full moon in Ingu's at this point, and do a little bit of dive into our Ingu's rune, which is one of our spirit guide runes today. So there are 4 superpowers, let's say, of the sage, and I'm not going to cover them all today because we don't have time to do them all justice today. If you want to really claim those powers of the sage for yourself, then there are 2 ways that you can do that. The first is that you can come to the mini retreat, Reclaim Your Sage, which is next Tuesday, which is it's a power retrieval process using word, using story, and using shamanic power retrieval techniques, northern tradition shamanic power retrieval techniques, I should say, in order to recover that essence of your sage self. It might be that you already have a strong sage and that you're looking to claim the next level of that part for you. And all of those the mini retreats, the 5 mini retreats that I have for the magical self, are then part of a single program called Amplify Your Magic, which includes a lot more than those mini retreats, and is really about augmenting and strengthening and bringing to the surface for you the power of the magical self in each of those 5 realms. So if you're interested in that, drop me a line and let me know. But for now, let's have a little feel into one of the superpowers of the sage, which is the curation of memory. So a little bit of a question for you when you're thinking about memory, and I love that you got Athala at this point, Suki, because Athala is such a good rune for thinking about memory and the curation of legacy and the tending of legacy. Athala means the rune of estate, the rune of estate, the rune of legacy, the rune of inheritance. And so one of the really important roles of the sage is the curation of that of estate and legacy. So when we think about the curation of memory, there are so many different ways in which we can do that, in which we can express the magic of the sage. And what I wanted you to do is to really feel into that and to say, okay, what's my relationship with memory? How do I tend to memory? So I'm going to give you some examples, but my invitation to you would be to feel into this for yourself. So for some of us, particularly if you are highly sensitive, which I know many of in this community are, when you feel into something that happened into the past, you can almost feel as if you're actually there in the moment. You can taste, you can touch, you can smell, you can sense. Which means that you can then bring that memory, you can evoke that memory back into the present moment with the power of the sage, the power of words, or the power of art, the power of expression. All of these things are parts of the sage toolkit to evoke powerful visceral memory, which we can do to bring healing for ourselves or to gather wisdom for ourselves. But we can also do it for others, and we can work with them on past life regression work, for example. You need that strong sage energy to be able to do that piece. For others, they've got incredibly powerful short-term memories. I can't do that at all. If I put my keys down, unless they're in the place where I've decided I keep the keys, I don't know where they are. No idea. Other people, there's the keys. I mean, to me, that's a miracle. To me, that's like a magical experience. How do they do that? No idea. but these are just different forms of memory. So there can be your actual ability to remember. If you think about Odin, Odin speaks of his two ravens, Hugin and Munnin. Hugin is the raven of thought and Munnin is the raven of memory, and they go out across all of the world, they fly out across the world, and then they bring back thought and memory to Odin, to him, and he brings them into his consciousness. And he always says, I fear, of the two ravens, I fear for Munnin the most. And sometimes this is seen as being our memories are more fragile, they're less powerful in some way, they're more open to like misinformation or misremembering. But it might also be that that's the most precious to him, the source of our experience. And I think this is important. Sages instinctively know that memory and the tending of memory is important. So we might think about it in terms of those of us who are wonderful writers. If you keep a journal, you are curating memory. If you do pictures, of what you've seen in the world. If you have photograph albums that you curate and you look after. If you look after photograph albums from your ancestors, and you're one of those people who say, I found this photograph, isn't that amazing? If you're somebody who listens to the stories that are told to you, handed down generation by generation, you are tending to your sage energy. It's important, like magical aspect of identity, and not just of individual identity but of group identity as well. So important for the sage. I wanted to share with you two stories that are particularly close to my heart, which is for my mum. So I think that my mum is having very high sage energy, and there are two examples I wanted to give you of what she does. So one of the things that she does is there is it's a very, very old horse trough. It's on the road that we lived on since I was 5. It's got the old water tap there. It's got sort of writing as to when it happened and things. And for a long time, it sort of was there, and it just had a bit of earth in the base of it. And my mum, for years now, has been tending to the horse trough. So she plants in it every year and makes this beautiful display, and she received an award, a community award for doing this. So she does this. She's tending to this little piece of history, that's there, and that other people enjoy now more because of the pride that you can see in it, because of the love that has been added to it by her love for it. And the other thing that she's done is she helped my grandmother before she died to write her biography. She helped her with the pictures and getting it all nicely done. Then she did the same for my uncle. Had written a lot of his biography, and then she sort of helped to put that all together for him, because he didn't complete it before he died. And then she wrote her own biography, which was done with objects. She found objects from her past, and she wrote the chapters with these. And it is such a beautiful gift. I cannot tell you what a beautiful gift it is that she's taken the time to do this and to share like precious memories that I now have from my grandmother's generation and now my mum's generation. So it's a beautiful gift for family. So there are many different ways in which the magic of the sage can come through. People who tend to graveyards, who go and they look after them and they tend to the dead, that is strong sage energy, because there is this sense that this is important. This is important. I need to do this. Now, what I wanted to bring into our consciousness at this point, when you think about the sage, I'm going to bring you back to that piece that I shared at the beginning in a moment, is I remember when I was at university, my boyfriend at the time was perhaps less enthusiastic about his studies than I was, and he had to read a book by it was Nietzsche, and it was called The Use and Abuse of History. He didn't want to read it, but I thought it was really interesting, so I read it and I told him about it. And sage energy. And Nietzsche brought in 3 classifications of historical knowledge, which is useful for us to know as sages. So he talked about monumental history, which is broadly speaking relates to activity and ambition. So this is like the big story. I mentioned like the horse trough. trough. That's like a little example of somebody keeping a monument of history, like a version of history. And obviously the road that my parents live on doesn't mirror the way that it would have looked when the horses were going along, and there are flowers in the horse trough now, not water. And I might imagine that there was beautiful crystalline clear water. Maybe there wasn't. Maybe it was disgusting water. We don't know. Our version of monumental history is very, very carefully constructed, and we can see the shadow side of that in things like the uses of propaganda, stories that are created about, this side was right, this side was wrong, this was great, this was not. That's the danger of monumental history, is that it can spur us into action because we go, oh no, this is the right way and we must do this thing, but it can really pull the wool over our eyes, because it renders history simple. It says this was correct, this was not, and that is dangerous when we go down that path too much. Now, the next form of history that he posited was what's called antiquarian history. And antiquarians, and again, this is perhaps more the sage self that we know, are very detail oriented. We're going to get all of the records, and we're going to find all of the stuff, and we're not going to be interested in creating a narrative of a beginning and a middle and an end, which is what monumental history does, because monumental history wants that neat arc. What the antiquarian will do is it will say, no, what we'll do is we will amass details, more details and more details and more details and more details. But there is an accuracy and a precision that the antiquarian offers that the monumental history does not. The problem being is that you can get so stuck in your collecting of facts that you don't move into action. And then finally, we have what Nietzsche called critical history. And critical history he refers to as, well, he doesn't refer to it as, it's like summarized as the energy of abolition and liberation. So it's sort of like looking at history in order to say, we're never going to do that again. It's like the rebellion from, particularly you can feel that like the monumental history. No, we don't want that story. We want something different. So you sweep it all away, and it's all about never repeating the same mistakes. And this is old, traditional, in the past. We don't want that anymore. We are critical of history. We use it as a means to try and liberate ourselves from a story that didn't really exist in the first place, because we know that monumental history has created a story around it, and we know that antiquarian history can't keep everything within it. Now, this is when I'm going to bring you back to the sentence that I asked you to write down at the beginning, so that the purpose of the sage is to make sense of the world so we can participate in it. Okay? Now, the challenge we have, which is illustrated by those three examples of Nietzsche, is that what we can do is we can decouple. So we can say, okay, the role of the sage is to make sense of the world. So the monumental historian says, here is a neat story, that will make sense of this for you. It might make you feel safe and comfortable, because then it's really clear, these are the bad guys, these are the good guys, this is what we need to do, this is the action that we will take. And you can see how if we have big sage energy around us and we're not standing in our own power as sages, we can get wooed by that story without bringing in our own critical faculty, or we want the story to be true. And what that can also do is it can render us helpless, because we can go, well, that story means that, and that's a bit overwhelming for me right now, and it's really, really big, and it's really hard, and it's really difficult. And we forget that piece, that the power of the sage is to make sense of the world so we can participate in it. Now, if you think about that in terms of the antiquarian, we can get to the point where we are so busy making sense that we don't participate. And so any time you're feeling like the story that we have curated for ourselves at this point is so big that we aren't able to take action from that place, we have to remember that the magic of the sage is always to allow us to participate, to be active within the story, to know the story enough that we can participate within it. And that is why my mum saw the horse trough, And she was like, oh, that's a lovely horse drift. And she didn't say, oh, well, I shouldn't do anything with it. Someone else will probably do that. It's the responsibility of the council, which is a story that's out there in the world, isn't it? About I, as an individual, I'm helpless. And I need to, maybe go and find permission from somebody, or somebody else will be doing it, or I'll make a donation to charity. I'll find a way of doing this that's sanctioned. What are the rules here? The sage wants to know what the rules are, but in order to be fully in our power, the question becomes, well, how can I participate in that? Which is what my mum decided to do, and she decided to, participate in the legacy of the horse trough by adding her flowers to it and making it something living and beautiful again, which and provides pride for people about it. So when you're looking at when you're receiving story from the world outside, the question then becomes, how does this story enable me to participate? Enable me to act, enable me to make the decisions that I need to make in the world. And I think that what I would add to Nietzsche's categories, which are helpful for us, I think, in understanding the power of the sage in modern society, and how those three types of history can move into conflict with each other, and all of them have the power to sort of abolish everything that's precious, or make a story that is oversimplified and makes us feel small in comparison with how big the world is, or pulls us into so many details and needing to be right and needing to know before we take any form of action, that we become disempowered by this big uber shadow of the sage. And then to say, well, actually, what does that mean if I was to create my own little monumental story within this? This is my story of participation within these events, or this is my story of discovery, where I'm going to go out and curate my family history, for example. Or I'm going to say, much as this story of great Aunt Edna, who is wonderful and brilliant, that's not my story anymore. My role is a healing role. I quite like the critical one as being less about abolition and liberation and more about being a sort of a freedom and a healing. That feels more powerful and potent to me. So what I would add into this, the sage, which isn't present in Nietzsche's, is the power of love. When we love story and we love history, what can we not achieve then? Now, I'm reminded that in our society, we have access to more information than we ever have in the past. Now, we can go and look up a fact at our fingertips, but has that empowered us? And this is where we come back to. The role of the sage is to make sense of the world so that we can participate in it. Now, if we become overwhelmed by the number of facts that are out there, so that we feel like, well, I can never add any particular value. Bear with me one moment. I'm just looking for something and I can't find it. One moment, caller. As soon as I went to go and get another one, I found one, of course. So yes, how does our work with our sage selves help us to become active participants in understanding our own stories, in interacting with our ancestral legacy, and in creating a new legacy for ourselves? Let's say a new legacy, participating in the creation of that legacy, being active participants in the creation of that legacy. All of these things are parts of the magic of the sage. And remember that we're just talking about one of the superpowers of the sage here, which is the curation of memory there. So I would love to know from you, and you can either do this live if you're joining me here live, or you can do it afterwards if you do #replay. How do you curate memory? Now, what is your special way of doing that? How do you work with memory? How do you work with legacy? How do you interact with the past? You know? And this is a really important aspect of the sage, which we're going to look at in a little bit more detail next week when we look at the balanced sage, when we look at how the sage balances and works with and integrates with all of the other parts of the magical self, because the sage performs a really important function, and maybe we'll talk about this a bit more when we work on to get onto the runes, of being a bridge between the present moment, which is basically all that actually exists. You know, the present moment is all that exists. I can't go back in time to the beginning of this live and start it again. That's not possible. But the sage creates that meaning, you know, as I'm working through the live and I've gone, right, I've got a structure that I'm going to work with, and what do I need to change as you're presenting your runes to me. And you know, the sage is doing that and acting as an interface, and my seer's feeling into, you know, what needs to come. But my sage is always working on maintaining the structure and organising that in partnership with my magicians. They're all working together all of the time. But what the sage does is it brings in that memory of monumental history, or of antiquarian history, or of critical history, to sort of help me to interact with the territory, the untouchable territory of the past. That's the role of the sage there. That's why it makes sense of the world. But if we don't have the in order to participate bit, then our sage is essentially disempowered. It's not able to actually do its job. So let's have a little look at the planetary movements and how these work with the energy of the sage. So we've talked about the full moon in Ingus. If you weren't here when I started at the beginning, just a reminder that you've got your full moon in Ingus meditation, which is a wild voice meditation. So it takes you into a very just gentle, meditative, receptive state where you're able to tap into your wild voice, your authentic speaking self, the unconditioned part, the part that hasn't taken on board everybody else's stories, that can feel into your truth. And then it allows you to give voice to those truths in the context of the full moon energy that we're working with at the time. So it's a really lovely exercise for you at the full moon. So that is for you if you are a member of Sooner Star Wheel. If you're not yet a member of Sooner Star Wheel, you can still join and receive that meditation. That's still available to you. And then we have our next planetary movement, which is tomorrow, is Frigg's Chariot in Wunyo. So this is a really lovely joy-making rune, and she really asks us about what is truly precious, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to focus in on memory, because all three of the planetary movements, particularly the last two, really call forth and evoke this sense of working with what is precious to us from the past. So with Frigg, she asks us to celebrate that. She almost asks us to move into a little bit into the sort of critical view of sort of saying, okay, how do I let go of that which I'm just holding on to because I think I should? You know, what are the things that truly have given me joy? You know, if you're doing a little bit of review and reflection work, which I would really encourage you to do at this period of time, then it's a time to sort of say, what are the things that I loved and enjoyed? How can I invite more of that into my life? And what are the things that I didn't love so much that I want to let behind? And to really feel into that energy of Wunyo as you're doing that rune of joy, of fulfillment, of happiness, of togetherness, you know, all of that. Why am I doing that? That's the love bit that we were talking about, you know, with the creation and the curation of collective story, of collective history, of collective memory. It's saying, you know, if we have to make decisions, where do we make them from? And I would suggest that love is probably a pretty good place to start. And then our final planetary movement is Suna's Chariot. So the sun is moving into Isa. Let's find our lovely Isa rune, the rune of ice. And this is a real place of stillness. But what it says is that this is not an inactive stillness. This is a very active stillness, which again draws on the power of the sage. It's a beautiful time for you to be doing this reclamation work with the power of the sage. It's one of the reasons that I'm doing the retreat at the time that I am this year. So Suna's Chariot in Isa says, you know, you are not your memories or your dreams. You aren't made of them. You are the light that gives them life. Now, that is who you are. that is what you do. That is what it means to be an active participant within them. Maybe those dreams change, maybe those memories sometimes change, and that's, maybe that's part of the function of time, is that it's not about preserving everything exactly as it was. It is about, I've made sense of those for myself using my sage energy, and now I'm going to participate in the reshaping of them over time. And I'm going to do that from a position of love and power, not from a position of fear and disempowerment, because that will shape those memories in a very different way. For me, I will make sense of them in a very different way. So here's our Isa rune here, the rune of ice. So there is an energy of stillness that's available to you at this time, an energy of the light, of retrospection, of introspection, of reflection that's available to you. But what these runes all invite you into is and what are you going to do with that? They call forth within us. Suki, you're saying, I'm writing stories and poems and adding photographs to ultimately and hopefully put in a book form of rich family and friend stories from birth on an African farm and the many characters and happenings along the way. And that is so beautiful, isn't it? So beautiful. And it is a reminder that when we make these stories precious, what's not possible for us, when we add our sage voices to the world, when we contribute to that collective story, when we offer the things that have made our hearts sing from the past. So a counterbalance, which is very sorely needed at this point, of stories that are just as true, but take us out of a place of hope and into a place of despair. We need those stories of light as well, so that we can deal with the shadow. They need to come through powerfully and strongly for us. So thank you, Suki. Okay, so those are our planetary movements. Let's have a little look at our runes. We've covered Ingus. I think that we're okay with Ingus. So yeah, I'm going to put that to one side now. So that was our first spirit guide rune that we're going to be working with this week. I've mentioned Wunyo a little bit already. So is there anything else that Wunyo wants to say? I think that what Wunyo is a reminder that Wunyo is often seen as the rune of like family and kith and kin, and it is that, but it's also the rune of ecstasy and happiness. And there is a reminder there that we are entitled to find our ecstasy and our happiness on our own as much as we are with other people. Part of that is about, if where you are on the introvert-extrovert scale, an introvert isn't going to find their happiness being with people all of the time. That's not going to happen. So Wunyo is in many ways, it's very unique, and it's saying the preciousness of you as an individual. It's claiming that. It's saying, yes, we're part of that shared family, that's a collective family of humanity, but celebrating you and following your star, your joy, your pleasure is part of the work of the sage, part of that claiming of your own voice, so that you can leave that legacy that is uniquely yours in the world. So that's our Wunyo rune there. Let me see. Then I wanted to look at we've talked a little bit about the Isa rune. Let's just feel if there's anything else that the Isa rune wants to offer. What I'm going to do actually, Trish, is I'm going to look at the Isa rune and the Alga's rune together, because there is an energy that they share. So although Isa is the rune of the ice and Alga's is the rune of protection, of our connection with the divine, they share the energy of the rainbow within them, or specifically the Bifrost Bridge, which was often considered to be either a rainbow or perhaps a little bit drawn on the energy of the aurora borealis. So it's that light, it's that energy of light rippling through us. And you remember that I said that you are not the dream or the memory, you are the light that gives light to those things. So there is a recognition of our own place as part of the divine that comes through, I think, with both of these runes. And I think that comes through for us when we can feel quite heavy and challenged in our energies, when we can feel maybe that the people around us or the world around us, sometimes we can feel that they drag us down, can't we? And I think that just happens, doesn't it? Everyone has a bad day, and if you're in the room with somebody who's having a bad day and you're a sensitive person, then you're going to feel that they're having a bad day. There's a rippling backwards and forwards with that. And what these two runes remind us of is that there is a rippling backwards and forwards of that. So when you move away from that, if you need to, and bring that energy of light back into your system, whether you go and you do a beautiful Sooner Star Worldwide voice meditation, or whether you come and you listen to the Winter Nights stories. No, this is about drawing on the wellspring of your spiritual sustenance, wherever that comes from. This is why I do the work that I do, because I was looking for the spiritual sustenance of the tales and the legends and the magics of the North, and I wasn't finding them. So I was like, right, well, I'm going to go and find the food that my soul needs. So these are saying, go and find the food that your soul needs, root back into them, and then get back out there. Get back out there and send your ripples out into the world for as long as you can. And the more times you do that, the easier it will be. I'm not saying it will be easy, because the world needs a lot of us to be doing this. But these runes are really saying, be the bridge of Isa, the bridge between the earth and the heavens. Be the spirit connected, fabulous being that you are. Is coming through with both of those runes. That's why I wanted to bring those through. Let's look at Athala now. So who was it that had Athala? Suki, it was you, wasn't it? So you were talking about that and what you've been doing, which is so perfect for Athala energy. So if you have Athala at the moment, do what Suki's doing, is what I would say. Or think about, the things that I was just sharing with the way that my mum has curated legacy. It's that if I was to walk through the world today, knowing that the way that I walked through the world left a legacy, that I left an energetic imprint on everything that I did through that time, what would you do then? Is what the Athala rune asks. If you wanted to remember who you are at your core, where would you go? What would you visit? How would you find yourself? The Athala rune also asks that. Find those places, connect with them deeply. It actually ties in with these two runes that we were working on there. Slightly different though, in the sense of there's a sense of place and solidity in place, and finding place and curating place, or objects as well, that comes through with the Athala rune there, of like shaping the world. Which brings me on to the penultimate rune that I wanted to work with today, which is the Kinaz rune, which is such a powerful rune for sage energy. So Kinaz is the rune of the torch. It is the rune of enlightenment. It is the rune of the smith at the forge, working hard to shape the metals that come. And there is this real combining of the, let's say, like the reality of whatever substance it is that the smith is working with. So there is a, there is a metal, isn't there? There's like, a metal that they're working with, which has certain properties. It's going to melt at a certain temperature. The smith will know, part of the sage knowledge, how to work with that. They will have been taught how to work with that, what the forge needs to look like, what materials they need to have around them. So here we have the Kinaz rune here. There's also, for many people who engage in artistic work, this sense of having an object, in this case, a piece of metal or something, like in front of you, and almost feeling like there's a shape that wants to be formed from that object, like the object itself as a spirit. And this is very much, you can find this within the Northern tradition, you absolutely can. The sort of idea of animism comes through very strongly. So the smith is working there, and this is where the sage starts to bring in the seer a little bit, or the healer a little bit, or the mystic a little bit, as well as that partnership with spirit. That the sage works in partnership with memory, with the knowledge of how to work with the metals and what to do, and that they want to create the legacy, they want to create something good and useful with what they're doing. But the other bits come in and they add the sort of potent magic there. Well, I feel really mean when I say it and make it sound as if the sage isn't magic. The sage is magic, different type of magic. So they might bring that spirit in as well. And then they use their artistry to shape and form the object into the thing that is wanted. And there is a nuance here. So I would say that to a certain extent in our society at this point, we have got to the point where the replication of an object so that it is absolutely identical to the previous object that was made has become something highly desirable. So the spirit of the substance that we are creating from is actually undesirable, you know, in the creation of a car or a machine or a computer or something like that. And I'm not saying, you know, I'm using a computer right now. You know, I need the computer. I need the computer to work, you know. But do I need every single object in my life? Do I need my banana to look exactly like every other banana I've ever seen? Or do I need my cup to be exactly identical to every other cup that's ever been out there? There's a balance that I think we've lost here, which we'll, you know, I'll talk about a little bit more, which is important for that that keen as energy, the synthesis of the sage self with the other parts of the magical self that comes through. So it is that molding of the known and the expert with the unknown and the discovery, you know, the mystery and the discovery that comes through with the keen as rune. And the sage self is celebrated within that, but it's also the synthesis of the other parts of the magical self that comes through. And then finally we've got the Ansu's rune. The Ansu's rune is also about synthesis and partnership and thinking about that sense of us as individuals and then the collective history that we might feel as if we can't impact, when actually we can. You know, we just in our own small ways, all of us are contributing to that big legacy. The Ansu's rune to me represents the sage energy so beautifully, because it's the rune of the mouth, it's the rune of the divine word coming from the gods. It's often seen as the rune of communication, and it's often seen as being the rune of the wind because of communication. So we see that sort of whirling wind of Odin, you know, the wild hunt. And this brings in an interesting duality of energy within the Ansu's rune, which is that the Ansu's rune is the rune number 4, which is often a number of stability. And it holds within it the energy of the oak tree, sort of stable, forming self, which the word ultimately, you know, is a definition. It's a defining tool. It creates story. You know, monumental history is created from structure. You know, so the Ansu's rune holds within it the capability of structuring the world, of making sense of the world. To a certain extent, there's a controlling element that the Ansu's rune holds within it. But this is why the Ansu's rune is important for the sage, because alongside that, you notice it's got 2 prongs there. I always think of these like the 2 prongs. We have the structuring, ordering energy of the sage, and then we have the wild, open-mouthed ecstasy that comes through, the new story birthing through the energy of love, the energy of the critical, you know, that sort of sweeps the stuff away when it's not working anymore and brings something else to the surface. And all of that is part of the sage as well, and perhaps the part of the sage that interacts most closely with the other parts of the magical self. You know, that embracing of the world, the embracing of the unknown, the embracing of the uncertain. And so if you are working on your sage energy, if you're working on really bringing that sage energy through more powerfully, more strongly, wanting to create your legacy, or wanting to work with the written word, wanting to offer change and transformation and healing through your words, or through the things that you create, or through your relationship with your land, you know, then working with the Ansu's rune is an incredibly powerful way to work. So those are our 6 spirit guide runes for the month ahead. Now, I haven't seen any comments for a little while, so I don't know if my comments have frozen or if you're all just being very, very quiet today. So apologies if the comments have frozen for me and you've been commenting and I can't see anymore. I will go and I'll have a look after the live is finished. But that concludes our deep dive into the sage. So just as a reminder, opportunities for you today. If you want to do Sooner Star Wheel and you want to have that lovely Ingu's wild voice meditation, you haven't already done it, I would recommend joining today. You know, you can do it later and you'll still have the potency of the full moon energy will come through, but there's no reason why you shouldn't join today and enjoy your lovely Sooner Star Wheel experience. When you purchase Sooner Star Wheel, you get all of those experiences for a whole year. So, you know, 4 lovely wild voice meditations for you every lunar month to help you feel into that mystical, magical part of yourself. So we have that coming up. We have Winter Nights coming up. So the 4 stories shared by Hermode very excited about. And these are my sort of gift to you through the winter season. And then we have our Reclaiming the Sage retreat on the 5th of December. So all 3 of them are available. You can go to the shop, www.maggierose.com/shop, and find them there. And I look forward to seeing you next week for our final Magic in Mind foray into the energies of the sage, where we're going to be looking at integrating the different parts of the magical self with the energy of the sage. Lovely to see all of you, and I shall see you all very soon.